Have you ever stood at the precipice of a question so unsettling, so shadowed in taboo and confusion, that merely holding it in your mind feels like standing before the chasm of the unknown? Tonight I invite you into a sacred space of understanding, revulsion, beyond judgment, and beyond the reflexes of outrage or denial. Here, together, we will peer into the troubled psychology behind why some are drawn, against all reason and morality, to the darkness of child pornography. If your soul recoils at the very mention, know that you are not alone. If your heart aches for the countless innocents harmed, or if you harbor your own secret fears about the capacity for darkness within the human mind, know that too is part of our shared human experience. You are not strange for your sorrow, your confusion, or even your curiosity. You are, in fact, exactly where you need to be, on the threshold of understanding, on the verge of turning knowledge into a bulwark for inner strength, compassion, and courageous action. Let me ask you, have you ever wondered, in your quietest, most honest moments, why does such darkness exist in the world? Why do some, despite all societal condemnation and catastrophic consequences, find themselves ensnared by compulsions that devastate lives, including, perhaps, their own? What lies at the root of such destructive attraction? Is it evil by nature, a sickness, a result of trauma, or a manifestation of lost virtue and self-mastery? Or is the answer, as the ancient Stoics taught, more intricate, rooted in the untended garden of the mind, the unchecked passions of the soul, the errors of judgment, and the neglected duties to oneself and the wider human family? And most importantly, can wisdom, true, time-tested, Stoic wisdom, for us any light in such dark places? Can we, by understanding, begin to heal, to protect, and to transform not only our own hearts, but the very fabric of society? These are not idle musings. These are the questions that haunt police officers, therapists, parents, survivors, and, yes, even those who struggle with forbidden impulses. And these are the questions we must answer with courage and clarity if we are to become guardians, not just of our own souls, but of the most vulnerable among us. Before we journey further, pause with me now. If this sacred exploration speaks to something deep within you, if you believe the world needs more courageous, compassionate, understanding, please like this video, subscribe to Stoic Path, and let your voice join ours by commenting below. What do you believe is at the root of humanity's darkest compulsions? Your insight might be a beacon for another dot now. Let us draw closer. Let us anchor ourselves not in fear, but in the unshakable calm of the Stoic mind. Take a slow, centering breath. Release the whirlwind of opinion, the temptation to look away, and the urge to judge before understanding. For the wisdom we seek tonight is not for the faint-hearted, nor for the passing curiosity seeker. It is for those who would see the truth, hold it gently, and emerge stronger, wiser, more compassionate, and more capable of guarding the light of innocence in a wounded world. In the coming moments, we will illuminate this labyrinth, challenged through the lens of Stoic philosophy, drawing on the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, and the forgotten sages of old. We will explore 4 core Stoic pillars, a master key for unraveling the psychological roots of attraction to child pornography, fortifying our defenses against inner darkness, and fostering the kind of self-mastery and virtue that uplifts not only the individual but all of humanity. Prepare yourself, then, not merely to hear, but to awaken, to step into the sanctum of living knowledge, and to emerge no longer a passive bystander in the struggle for virtue, but a conscious, empowered, guardian of your own mind and heart. Let us begin with the first pillar. For, in the words of Marcus Aurelius, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Are you ready to reclaim that strength, even in the face of humanity's darkest shadows? Let us begin, not with condemnation, but with courageous honesty. For how can a soul transcend what it refuses to confront? The first pillar on this sacred path must be the unflinching mirror of self-knowledge. It is here, and only here, that the roots of compulsion, any compulsion, including the gravely destructive fixation on child pornography, are first revealed, named, and thus rendered vulnerable to transformation. In the words of Epictetus, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things, and I would add, be willing to face your own darkness without flinching, without deception, without despair. We must ask, then, what drives some human beings, creatures capable of such love and creativity, toward an attraction so deeply harmful, illegal, and morally abhorrent? The Stoics would remind us of a profound, uncomfortable truth: no human soul chooses evil as evil. Rather, it is error in judgment or fundamental misunderstanding of what is good, what is pleasurable, what is permitted, and what is owed to our fellow beings. It is the elevation of desire over reason, of appetite over virtue, of impulse over moral duty. Let us first explore the psychological terrain. Modern psychological studies rooted in decades of research, including works by Seto 2008 and Marshall et al. 2000, have revealed that individuals drawn to child pornography often suffer from a combination of distorted cognitive schemas, early childhood trauma, maladaptive sexual conditioning, and impaired emotional regulation. Many report histories of abuse themselves. Others demonstrate traits associated with paraphilic disorders marked by obsessive, rigid fixations, often exacerbated by isolation, shame, and unchecked fantasy. But the Stoics would ask us to go deeper. What, precisely, is happening within the psyche at the moment compulsion takes root? Seneca gives us a glimpse when he writes, "No man becomes bad all at once. The human soul erodes, gradually one unchecked desire at a time. When reason is not cultivated, the passions, what the Stoics called pathan, begin to dominate. Lust, when not ruled by virtue, becomes addiction. Curiosity, when not guided by conscience, becomes corruption. And shame, when not transmuted into responsibility, becomes secrecy, and secrecy becomes a breeding ground for darkness." To the Stoic, evil is not a metaphysical force. It is simply ignorance of the good, and the antidote to ignorance is awareness. Deep, unflinching, disciplined self-awareness. Let me tell you a story, a parable not found in any scripture, but one that echoes in many lives. There was once a man, lost in a forest of his own making. Each tree was a choice he had made, each shadow a thought he had ignored. He had stumbled upon a dark cave, forbidden place, and returned to it again and again, because it offered a strange kind of silence, a way to forget himself. He hated what he found there, but it dulled his pain, until, one day, a child's voice echoed from within, and he knew, finally, the cave was not his to enter, that it never had been. But by then, he was not the only one hurt. This, dear listener, is the silent tragedy of unchecked compulsion. It does not only destroy the soul that harbors it, it maims the innocent. And yet, the Stoics offer hope even here, not as indulgence, but as a path of transformation. For Epictetus reminds us, no man is free who is not master of himself. So what, then, must one do who sees in themselves or in others these dangerous impulses? First, one must confront the self without illusion. Begin a daily journaling, practice of absolute honesty, no judgment, only observation. Track every impulse, every trigger, every justification. Write it as if another would read it after your death. For this is how Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations, not as a book for others, but as a record of his battle for virtue. Second, practice premeditatio malorum, a visualization of the consequences. See the harm, feel the devastation. Picture the shame, not of being caught, but of betraying your highest self. Let the image of the Cialdini child become a mirror of innocence, of sacred trust. Let that image sear into your judgment. Third, seek the company of those who walk in virtue. The Stoics taught that community is essential for virtue. Isolation breeds delusion. Accountability, when welcomed, is a medicine. Fourth, return again and again to this mantra: I am not my impulse. I am the steward of my mind. This is not to excuse, to soften, or to permit. It is to begin the sacred war against inner corruption. For we are not beasts, ruled by instinct. We are rational beings, and our greatest power is the ability to choose again, to say no where once we said yes, to plant a tree where we once fed the fire. And what is the fruit of such work? It is not merely abstinence, clarity, strength, true remorse, the birth of moral imagination, the resurrection of dignity, the capacity to protect, to uplift, to atone. For, as Seneca said, the first step in the correction of any error is the recognition of it. Desire, when left untamed, is a fire that consumes not only the object it longs for, but the very soul that shelters it. To the Stoics, this truth was sacred. The ancients did not believe that one should merely resist desire. That was the beginning, not the end. They taught instead that one must train it, reshape it, transfigure it by the steady flame of reason. As Epictetus urged, what is it to be a philosopher? To set our desires to aim at nothing but what is within our power, and to shrink from nothing but what is beyond it. Nowhere is this discipline more vital than in understanding the psychology behind the attraction to child pornography, a desire not born from health, but from a distortion. From the corruption of sexual instinct, miswired through trauma, secrecy, and a long estrangement from reason and empathy, let us not turn away in horror, let us turn toward it with resolve. Imagine, if you will, a garden abandoned, the soil of the mind once fertile left untended. What grows there now? Not flowers, but weeds, twisting vines of fantasy, thorns of shame, toxic blooms that spread silently beneath the surface. This is what happens when desire is not cultivated by the gardener of reason. In his discourses, Epictetus teaches us, if you desire something outside your control, you are bound to be disturbed. Let it go. Desire only what depends on you, your own moral purpose, your own character. But what happens when the desire itself is distorted, when what is craved is, by nature, a violation? This is where we enter the sacred labor of reconditioning the soul. Modern neuroscience, such as studies published by Dr. Kent Berridge and others, show us how reward pathways in the brain can be hijacked, especially through early trauma, compulsive behaviors, and habitual fantasy. What was once natural becomes rewired. The person begins to crave not what nourishes, but what numbs or excites in a maladaptive way. And yet, to the Stoic, even this is not beyond redemption. Desire is malleable. It can be reforged by the steady application of reason, by discipline, by the conscious redirection of attention. As Marcus Aurelius declared, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Let us reframe desire, then, not as an enemy, but as a wild force to be tamed, a stallion, not a snake, one that must be bridled, guided, and trained for higher service. Here is how. Conscious abstinence and handling. Do not merely say no. Replace the object of unhealthy desire with acts of disciplined beauty. Physical exercise, cold water immersion, work that serves others. These are not distractions, they are new pathways. Desire is energy. If not directed, it will default to the old tracks. The view from above meditation. Practice seeing the world from a cosmic vantage. Imagine looking down from the heavens, seeing your life, your urges, your shame, your habits all as small, transient events. Ask, is this worthy of a rational being? Would Marcus Aurelius, standing on the edge of the Danube, commanding an empire, have surrendered his soul for such a fleeting urge? Journaling against illusion. Each time desire rises. Write, not with fear but with inquiry. What is it offering me? What lie is it whispering? What true need lies beneath it? Recognition is the scalpel. With each entry, you dissect illusion and expose the inner architecture of compulsion. Negative visualization. Premeditatio malorum. Picture the consequence of indulgence, not as a fear tactic but as a sobering embrace of truth. Visualize the loss of dignity, the broken trust, the child on the other side of the screen reel, innocent, exploited. Let the pain become a boundary that your soul refuses to cross. Meditation on virtue. Each morning, reflect. What would a just, temperate, rational person do today? Desire cannot be eliminated by force, it is weakened by comparison. When you feed your admiration of virtue, your lust for vice shrivels. And now, a caution. The most common pitfall is to treat desire like a monster to be chained in the basement. But that which is only repressed festers. Stoicism teaches not suppression but sublimation, a rising of desire to its noble form. For even Socrates, as Plato wrote, felt the pull of eros, but he transmuted it into the pursuit of truth, beauty, wisdom. We must do the same. Your mantra for this pillar is simple and strong. I desire only that which honors my reason and preserves my virtue. Repeat it when the pull comes, when the screen glows, when the shadows beckon. What shall be your harvest? Freedom, the ability to walk past temptation not with clenched fists, but with serene indifference. The joy of waking each day knowing your desires serve your soul, not sabotage it. The slow, quiet rebuilding of inner harmony. Desire does not define you. What you choose to do with it, does. As Seneca reminds us, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. You have now faced the second test. You have begun to reshape your inner world. There is a quiet violence that precedes every outer crime. It is the violence of dehumanization, the gradual erasure of another person's full humanity within our own minds. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that no transgression occurs in isolation. Before the act, there is a thought. Before the thought, a distortion. And before the distortion, a disconnection from the sacred truth of sympathy, the profound interconnectedness of all beings. In the Meditations, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What injures the hive, injures the bee," and the inverse is true. What severs our awareness of the other's suffering, severs us from our own capacity to live rightly. This is the heart of Pillar 3. To understand the attraction to child pornography, we must not only examine desire and compulsion, we must examine the collapse of empathy. For no one who truly sees the other as fully human, as sacred, as sovereign, can derive arousal from their exploitation. Let that sink in. The attraction is not only a matter of desire, it is a collapse of perspective. The child becomes a fantasy, an object, a stimulus. Their reality, pain, fear, confusion is mentally edited out. Their tears are muted. Their innocence is reduced to pixels. The Stoics called this failure a rupture of right perception. And perception, dear seeker, is everything. Seneca reminds us, a good character, when established, becomes the only sure defense. But that character is only forged when we train the eyes of the soul to see rightly. Modern psychology agrees. Research from psychologists like Dr. Anna Salter and the Department of Justice's own profiling studies confirm offenders often exhibit cognitive distortions, beliefs that minimize harm, justify abuse, or deny the victim's suffering altogether. This is not merely error, it is soul-sickness. But it can be healed. That the Stoic prescription is simple but not easy. It demands that we rehumanize the other, completely and intentionally, until empathy becomes reflexive, sacred, and impenetrable. Let us explore the tools. The contemplation of faces. Take time daily to reflect on the real faces of children, not fantasy, but reality. Faces of hope, joy, innocence. Let them dwell in your heart, not to stir sentimentality, but to awaken awe. The Stoics revered nature as divine order. What is more sacred in nature than a child? When your mind begins to drift, return to their face and say, "This is a soul, not an object." The exercise of interchangeability. Marcus Aurelius taught that when frustrated with another, imagine switching places. He sins through ignorance. He wrote, "As you perhaps do in other things. Now, imagine the child as your child, your niece, your past self. Do the feelings shift? Good, let them. Compassion is not weakness. It is the foundation of justice. View from the end. Visualize the full arc of the victim's life, not just the image you once consumed. See the therapy sessions, the self-harm, the lost sense of safety, the future relationships stained by that moment. Let the full humanity of their story burn through any abstraction. For abstraction is the enemy of virtue. Active remorse ritual. For those who have harmed, even through viewing, there must be atonement. The Stoics would urge not self-hatred, but restorative action. Volunteer, support, survivor-led organizations. Write letters of amends, even if unwent. Channel shame into virtue. And above all, adopt this mantra. I will see the soul before the body. I will remember the face behind the screen. I will guard their humanity as sacred, because my own soul depends on it. This is not metaphorical. It is moral reality. Your soul does depend on it. Empathy, when deeply practiced, becomes a shield, a sacred barrier, a reflexive instinct that refuses to see others as less than whole. And in a world addicted to spectacle, fantasy, and disconnection, empathy is rebellion. And what shall be your reward? The restoration of your own moral sight. The ability to look at anyone, especially the vulnerable, and feel not temptation, but reverence. Not shame, but stewardship. Not confusion, but clarity. To see, truly, is to live rightly. As Epictetus said, you are a human being. You are not a beast. You have reason. Use it to live in harmony with others. We have now begun to restore our sacred sight. There is a moment in every honest life when the weight of past choices presses like a stone upon the chest. For those entangled in dark desires, especially in the consumption of child pornography, that weight becomes a silent boulder. It suffocates in quiet hours, poisons joy, distorts identity. And yet, too often, this burden remains untransformed. It festers in secrecy, or worse, it mutates into cycles of relapse and deeper self-destruction. But what if that burden could become a compass? What if your guilt, when rightly understood, could be transfigured into guardianhood, a sacred vow to protect, to prevent, and to embody the very virtues once betrayed? Here the Stoics offer their most redemptive lesson. Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we had come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day." He is not speaking of death alone, he is speaking of accountability. Of the courage to settle the moral accounts of our lives, not someday, but now. Because true responsibility is not a feeling, it is not simply guilt, it is a deliberate act of moral authorship. It is the decision to own your impact and to reshape the future with the chisel of virtue. Let us be clear, guilt that paralyzes serves no one, but guilt that illuminates, that leads to action, is the birthplace of character. The Stoics did not flinch from this truth. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor, wrote pages of self-examination calling out his own pride, his distractions, his harshness toward others, not for public performance, but because he knew that power without introspection leads to tyranny, and thought without accountability leads to decay. So too must we now take stock. What have you done? What have you failed to prevent? And what will you do now, today, to become a guardian, not a prisoner of your past? Begin here, the written reckoning. Create a scroll of atonement. On it, write not only your wrongs but the ripple effects. Who was harmed? What suffering might your actions have contributed to, even indirectly? No euphemisms, no softening. This is your Stoic inventory. Face it with dignity. The oath of opposition. Make a sacred vow. I will stand between children and harm, in my mind, then in my deeds. This is your turning point. From consumer to protector, from silence to courage. Write this oath, speak it aloud. Frame it where your shame once lived. Service as sanctification. Channel remorse into restitution. Not public displays, not empty gestures. Find a survivor-centered organization. Donate time, skill, funds. If you cannot be seen publicly, work anonymously. Stoicism is action, not appearance. Restore what was taken, even symbolically. Mentorship and peer prevention. Once grounded in your own recovery, be brave enough to guide others. Online forums, recovery groups, anonymous support channels. Use your story as a warning and a light. The Stoics believed virtue was contagious. Spread yours. Daily realignment. Every evening, as Epictetus taught, ask yourself, what did I do today that protected the vulnerable, that aligned with virtue? Where did I slip? What can I do better tomorrow? This is your moral hygiene, and beware the shadow of sham identity. It whispers, you are what you did. That is false. The Stoics would correct. You are what you now, not yesterday, not someday. Now. Your mantra. I am not my past. I am my practice. I am the protector I once needed to become. Carry it into every moment of temptation, into every memory of harm. Let it become your shield and your vow. And what shall be the fruit of such responsibility? Redemption, not public, not theatrical, but real, private, steady. You will feel it when a child's laughter no longer triggers confusion, but reverence. When your own reflection becomes bearable, then honorable. When you no longer fear being known, because you are living transparently. That is freedom. That is power. That is the Stoic path. And as Marcus Aurelius said, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. If you once mirrored harm, now mirror healing. If you once consumed, now consecrate. If you once fell, now fortify others. You have now passed through the fourth pillar, the discipline of responsibility. Now, traveler of the inner path, pause with me upon this high ledge. Below lies the valley we've crossed. Compulsion, desire, empathy, and atonement. Above, the sky opens, the clouds thin, and here, in this rare air of perspective, we behold the keystone of all Stoic wisdom, the doctrine that binds every pillar we have explored into one radiant structure. It is called the dichotomy of control. Epictetus named it in his Enchiridion, and his voice echoes to us across time with startling clarity. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. This is the crux, the master key, the great untangling, and when it is grasped not as a phrase, but as a lived philosophy, it becomes the unshakable foundation of all freedom. Let us breathe this in fully. There are things within your power, your thoughts, your choices, your responses, your moral character. There are things outside your power, other people's actions, past events, biological impulses, the judgments of society, even your fleeting emotions, which may arise unbidden. To confuse the two is to suffer, but to distinguish them rightly is to liberate the soul. For those wrestling with attraction to child pornography or any destructive impulse, this principle is no abstraction. It is a life raft. You may not have chosen your trauma, your neurochemistry, your past behavior. You may feel invaded by urges you did not invent, but what remains forever within your command is this: what you do with the urge, what you believe about yourself, how you meet the moment the urge arises. That is not your failure. The surrender to it, that is your domain. And when you practice this discernment daily, you no longer identify with the impulse. You observe it, you question it, you override it, you become at last the governor of your soul. Even neuroscience echoes this ancient truth. Viktor Frankl, in his writings Born from the Holocaust, distilled it with Stoic precision. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. This is the Stoic way, and it is always available. So how do we integrate this doctrine into the bones of our being? The morning reflection, proheresis practice. Each dawn, reaffirm. I will be tested today. My triggers will visit me, but I am sovereign over how I meet them. This is proheresis, your faculty of choice, your inner citadel. Amit. The choice ledger, evening inventory. Each evening review. Where did I use my power today? Where did I give it away? No shame, only clarity. Over time, you will begin to see you are more powerful than your patterns. The impulse dialogue, when an urge strikes, do not suppress it. Instead, speak to it as Epictetus did. You are just a shadow, you do not own me. I see you, and I choose virtue. This naming and neutralizing breaks the spell. The serenity affirmation, carry this in your heart. I accept what is not mine to control. I perfect what is mine to shape. With time, this clarity becomes effortless. It is not repression, it is realism. It is the steady peace of one who knows what belongs to him and what does not. And what is the harvest? Freedom, not from desire alone, but from identity confusion. You no longer believe you are your past, your impulses, or your shame. You are a sculptor, a citizen of the cosmos, a being in progress. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Indeed, you already have. The dichotomy of control is not merely a concept, it is the mountaintop that reveals the whole terrain. You now see where you fell, where you climbed, and where you must continue to walk with courage, and walk you shall. And now, noble soul, we arrive at the quiet summit of our long and sacred climb. What began in shadow has culminated in the golden clarity of self-mastery, insight, and purpose. Let us gather now the threads of all we've woven into a mantle of remembrance, and a compass for the journey ahead. A recap of the transformative odyssey you have walked through the fire, of perhaps the darkest question one could ask. Why are some drawn to the violation of the innocent? Not to justify, but to understand, not to excuse, but to transform. You stood before the mirror of self-knowledge, and in it, you saw not just the truth of your impulse but its roots. You named it. You refused to look away. You entered the forge of the discipline of desire, where you began to rewire, not by force, but by reason, by daily conscious choice, by honoring the higher self over the lower craving. You then raised the shield of empathy, and through it, you saw the child again, not as fantasy, not as stimulus, but as sacred being, as soul. And in seeing truly, you could no longer exploit. You walked the stone path of the discipline of responsibility, laying each stone with acts of atonement, with service, with the vow to become a protector, a guardian. And finally, you ascended to the radiant peak of the dichotomy of control and saw, with clarity, that your freedom lies not in controlling your urges, but in how you meet them, how you shape your inner world, how you rise again and again. 2. The flame that cannot be extinguished. What does this make you now? Not perfect, but awake. Not flawless, but free. Not defined by your past, but devoted to your future. You are no longer a prisoner of your mind, nor a victim of your shame. You are its architect, its steward, its rebuilder. Seneca wrote, "Soul has dyed with the color of its thoughts. You have begun to change the dye, to tint it with courage, clarity, virtue. And if you fall again, rise." The Stoics did not preach moral perfection. They preached moral persistence, progress, not purity, and always, the return to reason. 3. The call to courageous, conscious, and virtuous living. Now I ask this of you not as a teacher, but as your fellow traveler. Let the knowledge you have received tonight not remain here. Take it into your mornings, into your moments of temptation, into the hearts of those who need this voice of hope. Speak less about virtue, live it. Guard the innocent, not only children, but the innocence within you, long buried. Reclaim it, restore it, write, serve, reflect, remember, because you know the truth now. For the sage's parting blessing, and so, I leave you not with commands, but with remembrance. You are not your compulsion. You are not your past. You are not broken beyond repair. You are the one who chooses, who returns, who rebuilds. Walk gently but firmly. Think clearly but feel deeply. Protect others, and in doing so, you will heal yourself. If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining, Marcus Aurelius, and if it is not endurable, then transform it. You have the power. Thank you for walking this most sacred path with me. You're on the Stoic path. If this journey stirred something within you, help us plant these seeds in others. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and comment below. What part of this path opened your eyes the most? What will you now do differently, knowing what you know? Let us walk together, not just as seekers, but as sages in training. And when you falter, return here. This sanctuary of reason, of virtue, of truth, will always remain. Until next time, may you walk with clarity, and live with purpose. No man is free who is not master of himself. Epictetus, now go. Be free, your guide and fellow flame on the Stoic path.